Travis Wingoodsell. I woke up 30 minutes ago, 11:45-ish, and was instructed in my dreams to give you a more fuller translation of facsimile number 2. So I'll be brushing around wild hair. I'll be stopping the video, showing pictures at each step of the way. Facsimile number 2 has 5 main pictures, plus the hypocephalus itself, which is 6. And we'll go from there. The Wikipedia site on the Joseph Smith Papyri says that they're from the Ptolemaic period, between 300 and 100 BCE, which was centered in the ancient Egyptian city of Thebes, near modern-day Luxor. And so they're claiming that the bodies in papyri were interred west of ancient Thebes in the Theban necropolis in the Valley of the Nobles. What's interesting is that I've discovered that the papyri is referring to this Osiris Shishonk, who was a Theban priest of Amun-Ra in the cult of men who massacre his enemies. That's the ancient origins. They can have his family tree independent. Do you give his independent genealogy of 8 generations? That's the timeline of the genealogy. They make the claim, but they don't show the genealogy. Alright. I would like to have known his genealogy. Oh, Robert K. Rittner is the source for that. Okay. And it's from his book that I have. You better be putting it in there, Robert. Alright, anyway. The reason why I come Ombo is because of facsimile number 1. The reconstructed version. So I'll stop the video and show you the pictures and then explain it. Alright, so the first picture is the reconstruction of facsimile number 1. You'll notice that it's a falcon hovering over Osiris. And if you've watched John DeLynne's interview with Dr. Rittner, he refers to the conception of Horus, who is the falcon or hawk, and she does this by hovering over the body of Osiris as a falcon. Thus, Horus is seen as a falcon. And so Isis then becomes Hathor, the house of Horus, which he completely messed up. In Facsimile 3's interpretation of the pharaoh behind the pharaoh, Osiris on the throne, the female. And so that addition, in connection with Sobek, the crocodile in the waters below, is what tells me that this person was a priest of Amun-Ra, the Amun priesthood, Mormons, at the Kam-Ambo temple complex. And so I show you the map of where Kam-Ambo is located in Egypt, and it's just right below Thebes, which is Luxor, that's shown there on the map in red, a little red thingy. And then I show the pictures of what it looks like today as all these millennia have weathered it. And then the second picture shows that it has a wall that surrounded it with people giving offerings, which is what you do at a temple. And so then I show inside of Horus and Sobek hanging out together. That's what the picture is described as by the person who took the photo and uploaded it. Horus hanging out with Sobek. But he's in the human form, notice, not the crocodile head, which is in the other form, on the other part, with the coronation. So for the coronation ceremony of Pharaoh, he has his crocodile head on, whereas he's just a normal priest officiating there with the coronation of Pharaoh. And yes, that's what the Egyptian papyri are also referring to in Facsimile 3. And so you have coronation of Pharaoh, who is Horus, ascending to the throne of his father, and thus Horus and Sobek at Kam-Ambo is the location for the papyri, according to Facsimile number 1 there. And so then I show you Sobek in his headdress, and then another papyri representation of him as well. So that's my discovery of the location of where Osiris Shashank, was interred. All right, so I guess we'll start with a translation that everybody can have access to of the text before I get into the facsimiles in Facsimile number 2 translation. So the petroglyphs within Facsimile number 2. So let's stop this and put them up for you. Okay, I'm starting with the outer rim, and it begins at the very top where the God has his plumes pointing up over the rim of the circle strip, and it reads counterclockwise, and it's compared with Michael Rhodes's translation above. No, I think this is actually all mine. Or is this? Yeah, this is all mine. I had another one with his also compared in there. So it's a direct literal, and then a translation underneath that. And so what you have is the deity, Jabute, in Ben temple in Heliopolis, and very exalted, very spiritual, a virile bull which has no equal, a god who has many writings in temple of Ben in Heliopolis. And so I also show get this out of the way. Got so many things popping up here. Yeah, I also show the online picture showing where the missing pieces in Facsimile 2 were derived from in the one section next to Facsimile number 1, and I show Michael Rhodes's from his book Book of Breathings. He gives the printed transcription of the hieratic into the hieroglyphs. So that's where I get that from. And there's one extra piece that the first section does not show, and I show where that came from with that other picture that's online, and then gave you the translation of the outer rim. So now let's get to the inner portions. One more thing about the outer rim translation, Jabet, that I talked about. Michael Rhodes translates it as provider. Rittner, however, says punisher. So, big difference into translation by the two guys. I would trust Rittner's more so. But, alright, did I even... yeah, I don't... That's interesting. Get Osiris Shishak. Oh, they're adding it in there. Got it. They have the bracket and the things to add into it. Alright, so that's what was missing. So the translations of figure number 11, 10, 9, 8, they all come from the Wikipedia page. That's where I'm getting this from, if I hadn't told you this already. And so, O God, sleeping in time, figure number 11, figure 10, of the beginning, great God, Lord of heaven and earth, Figure 9, and below the earth and of the waters, damaged in the original. Figure number 8, grant that the Ba of Osiris, Sheshank, live. That's where we get the deceased name from. Notice that he has Osiris. All Egyptian dead who go through the temple receive the new name of Osiris, the name of Jesus, as we take upon ourselves as Mormons the name of Christ, as we get anointed as kings in Christ. Alright, so figures 12 to 15 were put in from the separate portion that I showed you. And translation they have is, let's see, the officiator calling upon that special particular transcendent God who lives by breathing, who negotiates the waters, pleads from the depths. May Ra descend to hear Osiris's words, come to Shoshank, who is dead. And then the bottom portions, the bottom segments, Rhodes and Rittner give two different versions. I'm going to give you Rittner's, because even Rhodes, when I was doing my comparison that I talked about, mine translation is different. So the version I gave you is just the version that I made of the outer rim. May this too, or nope, that's Rhodes. Rittner's, back, injury, back. There is none who attacks you. The Ba spirit and his lord will not be attacked in the underworld forever. Alrighty. I forgot one. So I'll make sure to get it and then include it. Figures 19 to 21, which is actually in the times and seasons numbered 19, 21 to 22. And so 22 is, behold, thou art ever, 21, as this God of thine, 19, in or of Osiris. Alright, let me make that change. Okay, that's what Egyptology knows. Now I'm going to tell you what Egyptology does not know and give you a fuller translation of facsimile number 2. We start with the whole hypocephalus. It's the Greek word under the head. And it's shaped as the sun, specifically that way, because Amun-Ra, is the head god of the Egyptians. And so the Amun priesthood, of which Sheshank belongs to, and as I suggested, is the priest at Kamambo, is his new name given Osiris, as Osiris ascends into heaven to live on a sun and travel across the sky as Amun-Ra. And so in that sense, Osiris is the setting sun who has died and is in charge of the underworld, doing battle in the underworld to rise the next morning as the newborn the born again son, Horus. And so, yeah, all religion stems from the Egyptians, as born again comes from that process. And the noon sun is Pharaoh at his peak as son Amen. If Mormons remember the name of their god, son Amen, which is not Jesus of the New Testament as a historical figure, but as the president of the church who is in the key of Moses, who has the keys of the office of Moses. And so the sun disk needs to be understood in the concept of Amun-Ra at noon, with Osiris, who has passed on, whose son takes over on the throne during the noon. And so you have Horus in the morning, Pharaoh at noon, Osiris in the evening, as they have Kepler. I think it's Kepler. I'm having an eye issue this morning. Kepler in the morning, Amun in the afternoon, and then Atum in the evening. All refers to one and the same. And the concept of pharaonic succession is understood by the Egyptians in this context. And so the sun, you'll notice, is dilated. It's an eclipse. Egyptologists will say, well, it's like a dilated pupil. At death, the eyes, the pupils do relax a little bit, and there is some dilation, but this is a full dilation. Technically, it's an annular eclipse, which we had on Father's Day this year over the old world. But total solar eclipse is also understood here as two of them for both eyes of Horus. And so you have 3 days of darkness, which is talked about in the Torah with Moses confronting Pharaoh, and in the Book of Mormon they also talk about 3 days of darkness before the coming of the Christ. And that's what we've had. We've had the first total solar eclipse on the 21st of August 2017. We had the second annular eclipse on Father's Day this year, 21st of June 2020. And then the third day of darkness is on 8 April 2024, which will cross over the United States at southern Illinois. The Egyptians knew this date, they knew the place, because the story of Horus going back to battle his father, or his uncle, Set, to restore the kingdom of his father, takes place when his eye is wounded. And it's technically his right eye first, but he does wound his religious eye as well. Let me put in that picture for you. Alright, so you can see how they show both as eclipses. The sun has a solar eclipse, the moon has a lunar eclipse. So yes, the last days is about the sun shall be darkened, the moon turned to blood, referring to not just signs in the heavens, but also to the events on earth of Horus returning to restore the kingdom of David. And that involves both the government and the religion in a theocratic manner. Now the United States, of course, where this event occurs, it does not have a theocratic government. And so as we're witnessing, as the king of Babylon, Putin, has placed Trump as his puppet king, Zedekiah, on the throne of Jerusalem, New Jerusalem, in America. That's the warning that the Smiths were giving through the Book of Mormon. And the religion is the religion of America, which is Joseph's religion, the Smiths' religion, which was conquered as he and his brother Hiram were assassinated, just as Osiris was assassinated and then usurped. And so Joseph then, in section 103 of the Doctrine and Covenants, verse 16, says, a Mormon will rise up from this apostate church that I had originally started, but was murdered, all that in historical context now, that it has happened, to restore the theocracy, theocracy of the ancient kingdom of David Moses, 18th dynasty, Tawut Moshe, Tawut being the god of the right, left eye for the religion, as you see there, for the moon. David and thought being phonetically the same. And so transliterated into Hebrew is the David Moses dynasty. And so the date that this was to occur was understood as a solar eclipse to start it off. Total solar eclipse. So 21st of August 2017 we know is that date, not just because of the other biblical signs that accompany it, but also the ancient Egyptian religious calendar itself. On the 21st of August 2017, it was the religious ancient Egyptian New Year. And the manner of calendar has the New Year on different days every year. And to have a total solar eclipse occur on a New Year never has happened, never will ever happen again. This was the one and only time that a total solar eclipse occurred on the ancient Egyptian religious New Year. And that is how we know the date. That is the date. And I found out by chance. Is it easily accessible? Where is it? Oh, yeah. Hold on a second. Let me go grab it. Yeah, 2017's over there, at the bottom of the pile. Is this going to be trouble to get out? Yes. Time wasted. Alright, that's 2019. Alright, 2017. The guy knew the Egyptian calendar, published the books in a series, and then I bought it, he knew nothing of the eclipse that was coming. He published it the previous year in 2016 for the 2017 year, because technically the 2017 year begins in 2016 as the calendar is different for religion and civil, but the civil follows ours for the most part. But yeah, and 21st of August, June, July, August, 15, 20, 21st of August is the first of Teki, sacred to Monturahi, feast of the new moon, and beginning of the new year according to the lunar calendar. So then he has religious prescriptions that he quotes from texts of the ancient Egyptians. Do not kill a bull, do not let it pass before your face, buy the bull from another one on this day. It is a day to be cautious of it. Do not do anything on this day. It is a day of rest. And so on this day you have religious feasts, the feast of Osiris, feast of Shu and Tefnut, the feast of appearing of Min, every new moon day, and the performing of the triumph of Thoth in the presence of Ra. So he had no clue that this was going to be a total solar eclipse that day. And so, yeah. And thus he didn't know, and thus this is now in my way. And so the ancient Egyptians were predicting, as they knew astronomy so well that they knew it all over the world, where it would occur and when, the precise date, 21st of August 2017, according to our calendar, which in their calendar became their new year, which we now know was designed for this future date. So that's something you guys are getting brand new from me, as no Egyptologist will ever know that information, because they don't do the research, they just know translation of the textual material, as I showed you. So let's see, the hypocephalus as itself is an eye representing the eye of Horus, eye of Ra, but it's a combination of both the sun and the moon together, as it is an eclipse, and the pyramid texts, that's the word I'm thinking of. The pyramid texts are the oldest known text that we have, but they are written in such a manner that the information contained therein are much older dating, and referred to the hypocephalus as the sun that enlightens the mind, and so in a sense they sort of thought of it as osmosis, as we all wish we could do with our textbooks in school. But somewhat reading material for the deceased as they wait for the day of resurrection with the coming of Horus. And so as we all have been led to believe that the first resurrection occurred during the Roman period, that is not the case. It's our days where there's supposed to be a resurrection of the dead. Now, whether that's a literal resurrection because we've figured out DNA to revive dead bodies, whether it's cloning, which is not really cloning, it's just producing identical twins, as I went over in another video. Or if it's the concept of a restoring of the ancient practices, and thus restoring the ancients in that context of a spiritual resurrection. We'll have to wait and find out. But that's what was understood by the Egyptians, is that they were waiting for our day. And so when I wrote my one book on Egyptian, it's available on academia.edu, that was the one thing that puzzled me, is if the resurrection had already occurred, there were some conflicts. And now that I've gotten a better understanding, since that publication in 2017, I've gone on to need an update for that book. And so, yeah, if you hadn't caught on, resurrection is the morning sun rising, born again in the religious context. I'm trying to think of what else needs to be discussed about the sun and the eclipse and the eye, single from the rest of it. I think I got it covered. Alright, now we get to the center, which is also understood as the center of the galaxy for the Egyptians, where on a sun is the source of Milky Way galaxy. One understanding, and many translation levels are understood by the Egyptians. And so it can even go so far as to be the founding of Egypt with the Nile River and so on. But this is Khnum, with the four heads representing the four cardinal directions in heaven, similar to the four sons of Horus, which the sons of Horus are also understood as not just heavenly but also earthly coordinates. It's blurred on the picture, just in case you're concerned, because the font that I took out the picture from was small, too small, so that when it's blown up on the screen here, it's blurred. They are ram's heads. That's what he is a ram. And so, yeah, there's definitely a significance to this, as he is Amen also, and son Amen is the one who makes the sacrifice, as father Amen is the one who physically made the sacrifice. As the story of Abraham sacrificing his son Isaac, a messenger appears and says, "Don't do it," and a ram appears. And then the date of a total solar eclipse north of Jerusalem, north of Egypt, up into Russia from the Netherlands region where it starts, on 8 April 4 CE. And so 20 years later, we have one over America that crosses over the previous one on the 21st of August 2017. The sign in the heavens for that one was in the Ram constellation of Aries. Mercury was also nearby, which is the messenger planet. You have the two baboons, which then become orbitals. They're sun disks, but they could also refer to as moons, thus satellites to the sun, or planets revolving around the sun, or moons around a planet, and different types of interpretations, but these are suns. Well, they could be moons because they don't have the dot in the middle, but it's questionable as to whether the dot has faded. This is a reconstruction, not the actual papyra. I don't think the actual papyra has the... Yeah, that's right. The original hypocephalus is gone. We don't know where it is, if it survived at all. But this is what it would have been reconstructed as. I could check others, I guess, to see if there is a dot in the middle for a sun versus just a moon. The baboons typically are moon animals, as the full moon has them bowing and worshiping the moon, which is kind of a unique condition. I'm not sure if man has taught them to do this, or if this was something that Jane Goodall type person has observed without them knowing she was observing them. Because they can mimic humans, and if they see humans worshiping the moon, so that they can then go and tell their fellow peer humans, oh yeah, baboons are worshiping the moon. Are you sure you didn't make them worship the moon as a domesticated animal? But anyway, they're associated with the moon, and so it's most likely moons that are circling a sun in the center of the galaxy. And so orbitals also are understood. The three humps is the body, technically, with the two outer ones as the knees, but it's also horizon, with the middle hump being the sun symbol, similar to the pyramid or the land rising from the waters of either the Nile or the Nun as the primordial waters, depending on what story you're translating. Like I said, the pictures have multiple levels of translations here, and all of these are a part of it. This is the sunstone. This is the Akhet for horizon, and Num is represented as the sun rising at the horizon, and also at the center of the universe. And so he's both the Father and the Son, as the four heads would be his role as Horus, having four sons, cardinal points, and then his ceremonial crown on top. What else do I need to point out about this? Can't think of it. So we'll move on to the next one. Alright, now we have Khnum up above, as he has just two heads this time, and thus Joseph Smith refers to this as being a duplicate of Kolob. Olabish, is it? as he calls it. But the two heads rather than the four is still Canum, as he's holding his totem. It's supposed to be a ram, but looks more like a jackal. But that's what they were. They'd carry those in a ceremonial parade leading to the temple. Oftentimes you'd have the male organ on top as well. The Greeks' festival of Dionysus, for example, had the phallic symbol carried on those little stands as they went to the temple to get drunk. But that's all it is. It's a totem, oftentimes for the family structure, the family totem, the particular deity totem, depending on what it is that you're having a celebration for. I took down the website, but the text has been given a translation from the Joseph Smith Papyri Wikipedia page, so you can refer to that. This now is different than what we currently have for the replacement that Joseph made, taking it from the book of Joseph Papyri. The book of Joseph Papyri, he was somewhat accurate in the sense that there are boats supposed to be in this location, with God sailing the heavens. What you have here, instead of Ammon sailing the heavens as a seer, as Joseph has the petroglyph from the Joseph's book of Joseph Papyri has the two eyes of Horus. Here we have instead two solar barks, I guess they're called. The top one is the Bennu bird of creation, sitting on top of a little stand seat throne thing on the Egyptian boat. He's the one that is Ben, that rises from the waters, the land that rises up, the obelisk, the pyramid. All different objects symbolize this event of the beginning of creation, which is corresponding to the sun rising in the horizon, as I showed you with Canum in the center of the picture, which I forgot to also mention. The X with the lines above it indicates that it's a foreign land. So outer space is foreign, and so this Bennu bird is just the bird of creation, the phoenix of light that is on the mound of creation, representing the sun, representing Horus, who rises as the baby to take over the throne of his father at noonday, and then die and rejoin his father at night, and then be born with the next generation in the morning. So the cycle of life, depending on which translation you're using. And then you have below that another solar bark. It looks like, with a little beak, that it's Horus the hawk. sitting in the boat with the sun disk on his head, and then the symbol of Kepher, which is the scarab beetle, and thus the morning sun, corresponding with the Bennu bird of the morning sun as well, the mound that rises up in the morning of creation. And yeah. Alright, so in this scene, which I flipped so that you can see it normally, has an error. The serpent, which you might think is evil, is not evil in Egyptian. It's got a duality to it, but it's supposed to have a penis. There's no erect penis. There's supposed to be an erect penis. The little curly Q there is the stand for offerings before Min, who correctly has a penis, erect penis sticking out of him. He's being presented with let's see, it would be the right eye of Horus, thus the government eye, as Min is sitting on the throne receiving revelation for government. So it's the governing revelation for Min. And that's what the serpents were understood as. The pharaohs would have the cobra serpent in the center of their foreheads for the third eye, which was understood as revelation, inspiration. So the two eyes of Horus together is the word Peter, putting in the E's for phonetics, and is the word for seer, one who receives revelation of the past, present, and future. And so that's what Min is being given. He has the flail, which is a pharaonic staff, the flail and the crook, the shepherd's crook, which are usually crossed in front of Pharaoh. He's holding it out. There should be a flail with the person behind the cow, Hathor. But you'll see that they have a sun disk as a head with the eye of Ra. Again, it's the right eye for government, so it's the governing revelation, as it's obviously female. She's got the Egyptian Ankh for eternal life, the shoe sandals that John was unworthy to unloose of Jesus Christ, as he only had authority to baptize, not the temple rituals of the Egyptians. And there's supposed to be a flail also in her hand that moves the cow Hathor forward. And that's what you have here, is the goddess Hathor, as her crown signifies who she is. They had the Apis bull ceremonies that go back into pre-writing, at least the writing that we have, times. That's why India thinks the cow is sacred. It's because people migrated from Egypt to India and carried the sacred tradition of the cow. You'll also remember the biblical story of the Israelites wanting to have a god to worship, so Aaron makes them a golden calf. Hathor. She is the house of Horus, the queen. Okay, so as the four sons of Horus are then before her as well. So she's the mother of Horus, and then you have the four sons, the grandchildren of Horus. And then some little animal tokens behind them. I'm only doing what I was told in the dream to do. I am tired. I want to go back to bed, but it's now 2 o'clock, and so I think I'm going to go running as I'm saving the video, as we're going to go over an hour, it looks like. And then I'll save it to YouTube and probably watch John Oliver if he was on last night, and then go to bed when this is finished, get some extra sleep. I don't have anything to do today. I need to make a phone call, but not until later. Last one. I am tired. Alright, again, the picture is blurry because it's a small picture segment that's blown up on the screen. This is a bird representing a solar deity flying through the air on the solar bark. As Horus also is represented. And one thing to keep in mind is that this is not a full translation. This is a fuller translation. As I've been indicating to you, there are multiple levels of translation when you understand the different stories in Egyptian, whether you're talking about a horizon as the setting versus the morning sun, and oftentimes the text will lead you into the one translation, but the pictures themselves have multiple levels of understanding, as I've pointed out to you here, as they all seem to tie in together, just telling different aspects of the original story in different manners and different ways. This is the theory that I've used for the Bible construction, taking the Egyptian petroglyphs and telling a biblical story using Paleo-Hebrew characters and learning of the Jews, so to speak, or learning of the Roman Christians, or the Roman Jews. And that's how our writings were transmitted over time. Each culture with a different language would tell different stories of the original deity from which they came from in Egypt. So the Greeks had Zeus, the Paleo-Hebrew Israelites were Yah, which are the pictorial equivalent to each other of the Egyptian creator god. Alrighty, I'm done.